What's going on, my Latin ones? It's your boy MoashDMC back again, baby. And today we have a very interesting topic to talk about. With all the chess pieces now on the board and Oda basically moving them wherever he wants, there are a lot of pieces still in the shadows and still missing. So let's go over some things that people still have questions about. And one of the questions a lot of people have a question about is, who is the 10th Titanic captain? And with that being said, let's just get right into the video. So who is it? And honestly speaking, before we actually get into the 10th Titanic captain, let's just talk about some other things in the story that actually are pretty interesting right now, because honestly speaking, the way things are going right now in One Piece, the power dynamic between the entire world is basically destroyed completely. And in my past videos, I already talked about how possibly there is a traitor amongst the Vegapunks. And if that is true and they do succeed, essentially you'll be not only would you essentially have a faction that is equivalent in power to a Yonko, but you also have a faction equivalent in knowledge to the people of the ancient kingdoms. And with that being said, let me just talk about that very quickly. So we don't know who the traitor is, and all clues are pointing towards it possibly being another Vegapunk that is a traitor. But until we actually get the concrete evidence and the concrete clues all solidified, and also Oda basically saying this is the traitor, I mean, it can literally be anyone, and I mean anyone. And I've already made a theory that it's possibly the Blackbeard pirates, maybe involving Shiryu, and maybe involving another Blackbeard pirate, or maybe another associate of the Blackbeard pirates. But going back and talking about the possible fifth Yonko, I've already talked about how Luffy was the fifth Yonko, but essentially the fifth Yonko would be whichever Vegapunk it is the traitor, and they do essentially, I said essentially multiple times today, so essentially it's going to be the word of the day, and how if the Vegapunk does succeed, not only would they have their own territory that is Egghead Island, but then they would also have the Seraphim, who are basically the strongest beings in the world, and the more they grow, the stronger they'll get. And right now they're fighting not only a Yonko, but CP0, one of the pinnacle of the world government's powers. And if they're not defeated or destroyed, they're just getting more battle experience for them to use later on against other opponents. And if that's the case, they're slowly growing into a thing that can truly rival the Warlords. And that was the whole thing to begin with, creating the Seraphim in order to basically abolish the Warlord system, because after everything with Doflamingo, after everything with Moria, after everything with Jinbei defecting, after the whole situation with Boa basically ever listening to the government, with whole Kuma being a cyborg that doesn't even have the power to even climb a wall by himself anymore, Blackbeard using the Warlord system in order to release prisoners and essentially attack and pull down and release prisoners and create its own Yonko crew. So if they're having this faction that is a Seraphim that are supposed to rival the Warlords, that already in itself destroys the whole power balance that there was beforehand. And now you're giving them, or you're the leader of them would be Dr. Vegapunk. Essentially, you also can say that the Gorosei, when you're looking at the pacifistas hierarchy command, the Gorosei should be at the top, but you never know. If the Vegapunk is a traitor, he probably put in a system in place that if the Gorosei do come to play, that they can override it in any way, shape, or form. They can override it in a way that they would deem most pleasing for them. Sorry, damn, I can't speak today. But with that being said, if they do have the Seraphim, if they do have the Vegapunk, but also the Punk records with all the knowledge of the past Vegapunks, or not the past Vegapunks, but all the other satellites, and they have that information together, but also the intelligence of the things from the past because of Ohara, they also have the ancient cyborg that they're possibly learning to rebuild right now. They're trying to find the ancient power system. They have all these things basically set in place for them to truly be this unparalleled force. Because not only would they have a warlord crew or Warlord-esque crew, Seraphims who are stronger than the Warlords, but they also have Vegapunk, who essentially can recreate the ancient weapons with being able to control sea beasts, creating pacifistas who can shoot light, but also recreate devil fruits. We don't know what Pluton is, or we know Pluton's a ship, but we don't know how big it is. But Vegapunk can essentially create a ship that rivals that, because if he can build a whole Vega Force 01, and Frankie's wanting them to look at the General Frankie, it's very possible for them to build a Pluton-esque weapon. And because we don't know what Uranus is, and if Vegapunk has some idea, he could probably recreate that too. So not only will you have this person who has the powerful crew with the Seraphim. He also have the pacifistas or the Mark IIIs. He also has ancient weapons or Sea Kings at his beck and call, but also knowledge and a way to possibly read the poneglyphs and a way to control Devil Fruits and a way to recreate Devil Fruits. Like, this is not only a Yonko crew, but this most likely would be the strongest Yonko crew, depending on how the Seraphim pan out. But essentially, even if they were knocked away with Luffy, Lucci, Kaku, and Zoro, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were destroyed. And if that's the case, they would be an unparalleled force in the One Piece verse, and that would basically they would need the people to later on team up, and this could be like a foreshadowing with Luffy and Lucci teaming up, that other faction are also going to team up that you didn't think. Maybe the other Yonko crews are going to team up. Maybe Big Mom and Luffy's crew are going to team up. Maybe Luffy, the Grand Fleet, Shanks team's going to team up. Maybe Luffy, Shanks, the Grand Fleet, the Fishmen, they all team up. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and that's how it's being played right now. And Oda leaving that statement saying that this character's fighting this character is like almost like a battle royale situation, that it could pan out that way, that they're all versing this one entity, or literally they're all it's just everyone throwing haymakers, and the last one standing is the winner. So it's very interesting to see how things are going to play out. So moving on, let's talk about the Warlords now. With the Warlords situation, things are really interesting now, and the reason why is because as we have Jinbei with the Straw Hats, but at the same time now you have an S Shark, which is another Jinbei running around. But then you have Boa, who's a very separated faction right now, and it's almost like Boa's like completely like almost Boa's like an afterthought right now, because we had the situation with Blackbeard attacking Amazon Lily, but then it was sort of dispelled by Rayleigh, and then after that it was completely done. And because of that situation, it's like, what is really supposed to happen with Boa? Like, who's gonna go to Boa, the Amazon Lily again? Like, it'd be really interesting to see get attacked twice, but it's now like Boa. I feel like Boa is just a faction that just needs to be somewhere with someone else. And because of her ties with Rayleigh, and because of her ties or her affection towards Luffy, it just like it makes sense that she may run into the Grand Fleet somehow, some way. And depending on what happens, because it may be the situation where Luffy does get captured, or something happens to Luffy, and that will makes Boa move. Because right now Boa has no reason to move, even though she's unprotected. Right now she has Rayleigh, but now does she want to move her family and her crew on the seas where it's more dangerous, or does she want to bolster the home front where she is right now? And it's more or less, where does Boa end up? And I'm not saying Boa is a 10th Titanic captain at all. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's interesting to see where the Warlords are all playing out and how we can deduce what's happening with the 10th Titanic captain. And because Blackbear went there himself, you can almost X out everything that has to do with Amazon Lily for now until something else happens that causes the Kuja Pirates to move. Doflamingo still being in the prison is very interesting to me. And the fact that we only have 4 Seraphim so far, and Doflamingo is not one of them, because, I mean, Flamingo would fall right in line with the naming. Actually, most of the Warlords would fall right in line with the naming system. But the reason why Doflamingo is interesting is because of the information that he has, and the fact that he already talks about an assassin coming to take him out. All the CP0 agents are pretty much like on the road right now. Like the three main agents all went to Wano, and technically 2 of them escaped now because of everything that happened. We found out later on that one of them did survive. But we have Lucci and Kaku and Stussy. Stussy's defected away, and now Lucci and Kaku are on Ekin Island. So it's like, who's really gonna go after Dolphy right now, and who's actually powerful enough to actually get the job done? And Dolphy has a lot of influence, so it could be a situation where it may not play out by the way we think. And speaking of Dolphy, it's funny how the one line from Dolphy is playing out really well right now. But basically, when he was saying that who will ally with who, now that he's taken down, there's no one really holding the reins back on all these monsters in the sea. Like, you have the revolutionaries, you have the Worst Generation, you have the Marines. Like, everyone's like a free for all, and like truly who's going to ally with who. And now we're seeing some people ally. We have to see Lucci and Kaku, obviously Luffy and Kaku teaming up, Luffy and Lucci teaming up. But I'm not saying that's going to continue to be a team up going forward, but it's really interesting to see how some people are starting to like sort of group together. And that's how the situation with Kid may play out too. And I'll say that for another video, or you actually can go back and look at that video, because I already talked about possibly other people coming to aid Kid with the whole Shank situation. But then you also have the Cross Guild, and this would be a great segue, because Crocodile was one of the ex-Warlords, and now you also have Mihawk with him, and also Buggy's an ex-Warlord. So you basically have 3 ex-Warlords all teaming up together in one group called the Cross Guild. And it's funny how they basically put bounties on Marines, and we haven't seen that actually played out yet. And now that we have Marines like on the move because of everything that's going on, you have Fujitora possibly on the move, you have Green Bull going to capture Weevil, another ex-Warlord, and then you have Garp going after Blackbeard. And it could play out one of 2 ways. Because Garp's going after Blackbeard, it makes it a situation where Cross Guild goes and intercepts Garp himself, or somehow they run into each other and they're like, oh, you're a Marine, you pay quite the penny, even though they would be the one paying them. But you never know if it's Garp. Like, a lot of people want Garp dead, or a lot of people want Garp like in prison to see what the Marines do. So, or even, hey man, I say it, maybe his old protege, Aokiji goes and fights him, because I know everyone's talking about possibly Garp and Aokiji fighting, and that'll be a pretty interesting fight to see like how the new generation stacks up against the old generation. But we have Kuma at the red line right now. We really don't know why he's there, but it's really interesting to see the fact that he is there, because he's climbing, even though he's being shot down from the wall, he's still climbing it. And it'd be I keep having this idea that he himself, after his very brief backstory with Bonnie, we're starting to get more when she like enters the memory bubble again. But it's like almost like he was being abused by the celestial dragons and the people that were also slaves as well. It could be a situation where he's just going to like just detonate himself, and that might be the reason why things really become chaotic, because he literally blows up the red line. But I'm not gonna go too deep into that. We already know about Blackbeard. We're gonna talk more about him later, so I'm gonna leave Blackbeard for later. And then we have Moria. Last time we saw Moria was actually him interacting with Blackbeard, and we don't know if Moria's actually dead or alive, because his fruit is probably one of the most powerful fruits in the series when you really get down to the nitty gritty. But we haven't really seen Moria be able to use it at that level yet, because of the situation with Moria and Kaido way back when he went and challenged him and ended up losing his entire crew, being kicked off. Went to Thriller Bark, started building up his zombie crew to go back and challenge the New World again, but we really haven't seen him. And then his whole crew got dismantled again because of Luffy, and then he went to Marineford, got bodied by Dolphy, and then he basically disappeared. Perona went to go chill with Mihawk, and then all of a sudden, Absalom's dead. Moria's trying to fight Blackbeard, and Blackbeard's like, hey, you want a position on my crew? You're pretty powerful, why not? So it's very interesting to see how that goes. And it'll be really, really interesting to see if we actually get the reiteration of the Green Bull trope right now. And the Green Bull trope is having the liposuction that everyone wants in One Piece. I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen with Queen. It'd be really interesting to see a Slim Queen, because I already drew a Slim Queen in one of the SBSs. But right now, people are talking about possibly a Slim Weevil, and Slim Weevil's an ex Warlord as well, and a Slim Weevil looking very reminiscent to Whitebeard, which would be truly interesting. And it'd be really interesting to see what happens with Weevil, because right now he's sort of just out there, and they sort of developed the plot line with Weevil possibly being another clone with not the Don. Not Ben Beckman. Damn. Why can't I think of her name right now? Miss Bucking. There we go. Miss Bucking basically saying that is Whitebeard's child if you don't believe me, or that's my child, or that is Whitebeard's child if you don't believe me. Going Vegapunk, sort of like hinting towards like Weevil also being a clone. I think it was the same chapter that Stussy was revealed to be the first successful clone, or the chapter after that. I know basically they were in succession. They were talking about Stussy being a clone, and then Weevil being a son of Whitebeard. So it's interesting how that plays out, if it actually is the son of Whitebeard, and how now with Marco, like with Weevil saving the island, or Sphinx Island, and Baka's like, I need your help to go save my son, please. We'll make a situation, we get an interaction between Marco and Green Bull, or maybe other Blackbeard pirates in Green Bull. We don't really know how it's going to play out, but it's very interesting to see how it does play out, because now we have a plot line with bringing Weevil into the story involving other characters like Marco. And it could be a situation where Marco's Delphi was also very sought after, and some Blackbeard pirates end up going after Moria, and then going after Marco, and then Marco's going after Weevil, and we get that interaction with Green Bull, Weevil, and Blackbeard pirates. Who knows? And it could be, and the reason why it's interesting is because since Aokiji is a Blackbeard pirate, and we saw Aokiji do go out and do things against other Yonko crews, I don't think Aokiji would be very afraid to fight against Green Bull. So, and that'd be a pretty good matchup between like basically the cold fruit, or his ice, versus Green Bull being nature itself. So we see how that goes. Then we also have Moria. Then we don't really know about Moria, and I think that's it for the Warlords right now. I think I ran down all of them very quickly. But with that being said, let's get into the Titanic Captain, and why that's very interesting to talk about. It's because we still don't know who it is. And because it's so interesting that it's so wide open, that it could there could be a line of thinking for it to truly be anyone, right? And with Blackbeard's vast knowledge of the world itself, and even knowing about Lunarians, could be a situation where he knew about some people from the Sky Islands. Like I was thinking, like maybe like you never know, like maybe like he interacted with Wiper, and Wiper's like, oh yeah, I wanted to visit Blue Sea now because of everything with Luffy, and then Wiper doesn't really know much about Blackbeard, but he's like, all right, cool, I'll just join this guy, and maybe Wiper is a 10th Titanic Captain. We talked about, even though we know he's guarding Gonfall, the god, or with the Kami up in Skypiea last time we saw him. Not Skypiea. I think they're in a new Skyline. I can't remember the cover story, but I know Wiper and the other Shandians are basically guarding Ganfall and the chief. So we know he's not gonna be Wiper. But speaking of another Skypeen or another sky person, Yarouj. Yarouj is also a very another viable candidate because we don't know anything about Yarouj. We know that he went to Big Mom's territory. We know he went to Raijin Island. We know he was on Balloon Terminal when Kaido jumped off. And that's pretty much it. And he's been like pretty much out of the story for the rest of the series. And it's like, why? You know, like even though the supernovas was, like Oda said that he didn't have a plan for the supernovas, like he really just drew them right like the week before the chapter came out. It's interesting because he's basically used every single supernova in the series now, and has them almost very and they're very much in the plot. Like Beige was part of the whole Big Mom arc. We had Bonnie now part of Egghead. We have Kid and Law basically fighting Big Mom. We have obviously Killer being the right hand man taking down Hawk. It's like they're very much a part of the plot now. So it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with Yarouj, because right now it's like he could be an ally, he could be an enemy, he could just be this third party who has some type of information that we have no idea about that may bring it to us in a very nonchalant way. He may be the one to unify all the sky people, maybe bring a Nell down from the moon. I keep talking about it right now. It's there for the very based on retribution and karma, and Burker was destroyed. He's a Birkin, and the person who destroyed Burker was a Nell. So it could be tied, that storyline could be tied some way somehow with Yarouj bringing retribution to Enel, or maybe bringing retribution for the sky people who were isolated not only from their own sky race people, but also probably people from the Blue Sea, like because the Shandians were basically like castaways, not like really castaways, but they were basically like shunned, or not, they were basically confined in this one area, and then when they were shopping the sky, they were basically ransacked by the sky beings. So like you never know how it's going to play out with them, and it'd be interesting to see if Yarouj is the one that brings them all together, or Yarouj is just like out here just slaying people for Blackbeard. Yarouj is probably sent to Big Mom's territory because of Blackbeard. We don't have no idea, and that's why it's interesting that Yarouj may be the 10th Titanic captain, because he's just like a big question mark. And I like the idea that he is a question mark because of it, there's so much that can play out in the story. And speaking about another 10th Titanic captain, I've already talked about him before, and that's Aokiji. I mean, it would make the most sense that one of the most powerful people. Oh wait, time out. Sorry, almost forgot to change. I almost forgot to change the picture. But yeah, we have Jesus Burgess, Shiryu, Van Auger, Aval Pizarro, Lafitte, Captain Devon, Sanhon Wolf, Vasco Shot, and Doc Q. It's very interesting to see like who's where right now. We know Burgess is with the Blackbeard, Shiryu is unknown, Van Auger is with Blackbeard, Aval Pizarro is unknown, Lafitte is unknown, Katarina Devon is also unknown, Sanhon Wolf is unknown, Vasco Shot and Doc Q are also with Blackbeard. I think that's everybody. Can't remember, but I know Katarina Devon and Vasco Shot went to Blackbeard to Amazon Lily, and so they were part of the story. But I don't know about Alvaro Pizarro. I can't remember correctly who were the ones that specifically went to fight Blackbeard. Went to fight with Blackbeard. I know it was Blackbeard, Doc Q, Van Auger, and Jesus Burgess. I think it was just them. And then he was putting in the ship. I can't remember if it was all of them, but that's beside the case. Like, I don't think we don't have a lot of the storyline for Shiryu, Sanhon Wolf yet. Katarina Devon with her ability is very interesting. Lafitte with his ability is very interesting. And I can't remember if Aval Pizarro was there. I literally can't remember, but I don't think he was. I'm almost positive that he wasn't. But what he's up to. So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, essentially 5 Blackbeard pirates unaccounted for, plus Aokiji, right? So if Aokiji is the 6th, like he not only would be like maybe one, or like obviously if you're looking at this list, you could probably put him at 2. I mean, number 1 easily. You never know how strong Shiryu is with the Dara Fruit. We don't really know. But you could put Aokiji at number 1. He was an ex-admiral at number. He may even put him above. Some people might even put him above Blackbeard. So yeah, Aokiji as this huge like fighting prowess on the Blackbeard Pirates, and if you don't put him as a captain, that just proves that whoever the 10th Titanic captain is has to have some importance to the story. Because if Aokiji's not, and Aokiji's just allied with the Blackbeard Pirates, I don't think he is, because if Aokiji's going out and getting planting goods and capturing pudding, but also dressed like the Blackbeard Pirates, it's very hard pressed for me to believe that he's just an associate. I think he's definitely on the crew, but if he's not a 10th Titanic captain, that is crazy. And then you have the whole storyline between what actually sunk the Titanic. It was an iceberg, Aokiji ice ability, and like Aokiji's actually is still a spy within the Blackbeard Pirates, which is still possible, but it'd be more interesting if it was not only was he a spy, but also part of the 10 Titanic captains. And it's interesting because most of the people didn't really even trust Aokiji yet, and I still don't think they do. So you give the 5 people, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you give the 5 people to follow. Am I counting wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 people with Aokiji now. So it could be a situation where they're trying to like keep tabs on him, or maybe they're running like an operation to go and do something, and maybe they do intercept Blackbeard and they have a huge battle. But not knowing who the 10th Titanic Captain is leaves the story open, because of that way could sway the plot line in a multitude of ways. Like if it is Aokiji, you have the whole him being tied to Sword and him being like a spy. If it is tied to Yuruji, you have him being tied to possibly the Sky People, and bringing the Sky People into the huge war that's supposed to happen. It could even be a Nell, you know, essentially, like even if Yuruj like went to find, like say Blackbeard was keeping tabs on Yuruj and wanted his Devil Fruit, and Yuruj is on his way to the moon, and then some way they end up on the moon. Like we have no idea, and that's how the story is being played right now. Maybe a Nell ended up being the 10th Titanic Captain. Like who knows? It's really interesting to see how it all plays out. Obviously, the Nell one is a complete and utter stretch, but it'll be interesting if it does play out that way, that Nell somehow comes back into the story because of Yuruj and XYZ. And another one that people keep talking about, and the one I wanted to talk about right now, is also Moria. And I'll actually say Moria for the end. That's why I have S King, because it's for Shadow King. So with the 10th Titanic Captain, with that being so open, it's very interesting to see how it's going to play out and how it actually makes the story move in a certain direction. And also, I'm trying to think of other people that we haven't seen in the story yet. I don't think the 10th Titanic Captain is going to be someone we don't know. Because it's actually still unknown, I think it's going to be someone that we do know, at least know of. And the reason why I wanted to say Moria for last is because of SNS. And SNS basically is Shadows and Science. And the reason why I'm putting Shadows and Science together is because of the previous arc, Thriller Bark, and then currently the whole situation, the whole murder mystery situation going on Egghead Island. So for Shadow, right, I want to go back all the way to Thriller Bark, and a lot of people tie Saba Odi to Egghead Island. Like you have a lot of similarities. You have Sentomaro on Egghead, Sentomaro on Egghead, Sentomaro on Saba Odi with the Pacifistas, Sentomaro now on Egghead with the Mark IIIs. You have a Celestial Dragon, Saturn. We also have Kizu pulling up. Kizu pulled up on Saba Odi. You have the Worst Generation. Even though the Worst Generation's not there as much, like Saba Odi was like more like they were attacking the Worst Generations, but now you have like the Yonko crew being there, and like they're sort of like how the Pacifistas, how the Worst Generation on Saba Odi is just switched with Luffy and his crew. And even though his crew was there, it's sort of playing out the same way. Like they're all separated now, fighting a different part of the faction rather than all being together in the auction hall and Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon. But there's a lot of similarities right now to Saba Odi to Egghead. I'm not trying to draw too many similarities, but I find it really interesting. But the thing is with the arc that happened right before that, right, and how they were very much not alike, but similar. Like Wano and Thriller Bark like Wano draws a lot of elements from a lot of different arcs, but Thriller Bark and Wano also have a lot of similarities too. But I don't want to draw too much on that. I don't want to get too caught up on the similarities between the arcs, more or less the situation with the scientists per se. And how Dr. Hogback, right, was the first like real doctor we got introduced to into the story that the Straits actually met. Like obviously we have Dr. Hirolic, but Dr. Hirolic passed before the Straits could even meet him. And you have Dr. Correja. Dr. Correja obviously had interaction with the Straits, but that was before the Straits were a whole as a group. And obviously Dr. Hogback, the Straits weren't whole, but the Straits were much more of an intuitive group at that moment. They had much more Straw Hats in the mix. They Chopper was a part of the crew already. Now we had Frankie. We also had Brooke there interacting with them too. So we had a lot more of the crew together in that moment at Thriller Bark. And I think the only person that was missing at the time, I think was just Jinbei, right? Like Jinbei's the only one that didn't join the crew at the time yet. Or am I missing someone? And I think all the Strats right now were pretty much like all there, right? Yeah. Damn, it's been a while. It's been a while since I read Thriller Bark. Probably like a couple months actually since I read Thriller Bark. But yeah, they're all together now as one group. But on Thriller Bark, we had Dr. Hogback, and essentially, now think about Dr. Hogback and I think about Dr. Vegapunk, and I'll go down the list of all the scientists too. I'm just going to leave them out. But Dr. Hogback was essentially, because of his love that had passed away, he was basically helping Moria, and Moria was helping him. They were using shadows. They were also recreating dead bodies and bringing them back to life, right? Essentially. And when we think about Vegapunk, is that Vegapunk wasn't bringing back life like Moria and Dr. Hogback, but Vegapunk was basically using his lineage factor to create life. So right there, you have somewhat of a parallel between creating life and bringing back life, right? And then you have Moria creating an ancient giant, and then the whole situation with the giant, not the giant cyborg, but the giant cyborg that couldn't be brought back. And then you have Ors and how he's tied to the ancient giants as well. But then you also have the ancient giant, talking about the ancient giants and how the ancient power system as well, but basically Moria recreating Ors Jr. I mean not Ors, recreating Ors to mimic the powers of Luffy, and how that was very reminiscent to how now like Vegapunk's able to recreate devil fruit powers through the lineage factor of people. And obviously it was not the lineage factor of the shadow, but the shadow, the soul, and the lineage factor, I feel like they're not all the same, but they can all be applied in almost the same way. And like how Moria was using his shadow to almost replicate the ability of Luffy's Devil Fruit, and now we have the replication abilities in Egghead Island, really with the Seraphim. But like I said, I'm not really trying to draw too many similarities, but it's almost like Dr. Hogback was the beginning of like the rolling scientist that we're going to later on see. With Dr. Hogback basically recreating zombies and more aiding him to basically bring back life rather than recreate life. And then we move over to Caesar, and then right after that we go through the bark into Sabodi, Break, Fisherman Island, and then we have Wano into Egghead, and obviously you can go look Oars. And then you can tie like the numbers to Oars as well. But like I said, I'm not trying to draw too many similarities between the arc. But essentially, right after the time skip, we have Dr. Hogback basically trying to bring back life, and then you have Caesar trying to recreate power. So with Caesar, his big thing was creating the smiles, using the kids, also trying to recreate, trying to create the gigantification process. So essentially, now you have Dr. Hogback trying to bring back life. You have Caesar trying to recreate power with the smile Devil Fruits, and obviously most of them were a failure. Like I think it was like 10% that was actually successful, but like he was trying to basically recreate Devil Fruit powers with the lineage factor knowledge that he got from Vegapunk when he was originally on the mats. And it'd be really interesting if Dr. Hogback was on the mats too, but I'm not trying to go too deep into that. But now you have, so we go from Dr. Hogback and then we go to Caesar. And it's almost like we grow in complete intelligence of the sciences. So we start off with Dr. Hogback. From Dr. Hogback, we go to Caesar. Caesar was a part of the mats, so Caesar was a little bit way ahead of Dr. Hogback at that time. So now you have Caesar, we got the recreation of Devil Fruits and the smiles, and then the failed smiles as well, so he wasn't that great of a scientist. So we move on from him, then we move on to Judge. And I was talking about how Dr. Hogback was bringing back life, Caesar was creating power, and then Judge is basically trying to not only create power, but also create clones, which he did. He basically created life by creating these clones. Obviously in the image of all soldiers and then his children being emotionless zombies who are just all powerful that listen to him in order to take over the season, obviously ally with Big Mom. That was the whole purpose of him trying to ally with Big Mom in order to gain more power. But now you have Dr. Hogback trying to recreate life, Caesar creating power with Devil Fruits. You have Judge who creates power with his children but also creates clones or another life. And then now you move over to Queen, who essentially is almost the opposite. Queen's like trying to take away life by creating the plagues, like Queen the Plague. And how Queen's like illnesses were all like detrimental to the people that they touch, but then also even using their own life force against them with the Ice Oni virus, basically using their own life force against them. And the interesting part is the fact that they're Onis, and like Kaido was also an Oni, but we haven't got too much like depth about what actually is the Ice Oni virus and how Queen actually made it, and if the Toby Robo members with all the horns, with the real horns, are actually part Oni because of Queen. And I really want to see if that actually plays out, that it is the case, but we'll have to wait and see. But how we go from creating life or bringing back life to creating power to creating power but very faulty with Caesar. Then we have Judge creating power with his children, but also basically creating clones to bolster his army. And then you have Queen, a person who's taking away life. And now we're into like the perfect scientist, or not the perfectionist of the scientist, who even thinks because the color is wrong of the dragon that it's a failure. But essentially, he's like, not only can I do everything that they did, but I am doing something that they were doing back in the past, and I'm on the brink of discovering this. And because of that, I need to be taken out. And that's why I'm going to put the shadows, because someone's in the shadows, not only relaying the information that he can read Poneglyphs, but also relaying the information of the weapons that he has and the things that he can do. So not only can he recreate Devil Fruits like Caesar, not even though Caesar's like him, but like he can recreate Devil Fruits like Caesar. We can also recreate clones with the organoids, or the organisms, the cloning of the organisms, and that's what Atlas and Robin were talking about. He has the information of the past. He can technically bring back life, but I want to harp onto that because that was definitely just a Hogback thing. But recreating life, or just recreating clones altogether with the Seraphims. So now we have this person who is literally untouchable when it comes to the science world. And the reason why I'm going to put in the shadows is because now that we have a traitor, which I talked about could possibly be another Yonko crew, now that we have a traitor in the shadows, it's very interesting to see who it could be. And this is why I want to keep this up. And I keep forgetting to change this. Like, the next thing was supposed to be the Mads, and then talking about Queen, Caesar, Vegapunk, Judge, and then possibly Stussy in the background. But like I said, Vegapunk being the perfect scientist, Caesar trying to recreate power is basically with his smile dare fruits. Queen trying to take away life with Queen the Plague, and then Judge trying to recreate clones as well. Vegapunk has clones, Vegapunk has dare fruits, and Vegapunk basically has poison just like Queen, but also like Battle Frankie, so he's able to weaponize most of the things that he has. So you have Vegapunk almost at the pinnacle, and the last one I'm talking about is Moria, and not only for the 10 Titanic captain spot, but because of the whole shadows thing and the whole lore, like the Among Us vibe that's going on at Egghead Island right now, like we don't necessarily know who it is, right? And that is the biggest thing, is because it is someone truly hiding in the shadows. And I think at one point, I think people were conspiring that it was actually Moria, because like one of the outlines actually looked like Moria. It's really interesting to see. But if you go back and try to find the panel, I think it was like the Pythagoras right before he got attacked by, I think, a snake. I think it was like a panel that almost was reminiscent to Moria. But Moria is someone who can like travel in the shadows and be undetected and unseen, which is very plausible of what's happening right now. But then you also have Katarina Devon, who can transform into almost anyone at any given moment. I don't know what the prerequisite is to being able to do that. Maybe touching it, maybe just seeing them. Then you also have Lafitte being able to sneak into the meetings of the Warlords, but almost being completely undetected by the likes of Mihawk and Sengoku, which is very interesting, right? And obviously, we don't know that, and we don't know the implications of. We don't know the implications of the ability that. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot Shiryu. Shiryu literally has the ability he can turn invisible. So you have Moria who can hide in the shadows. Possibly, I'm talking about if he is the 10th Titanic captain. Moria who can hide in the shadows. Lafitte who can go undetected somehow, some way. Katarina Devon who can turn into anyone, and then Shiryu who can turn invisible. You have 4 people who can realistically sneak into almost any facility in the entire world, go completely undetected. And another person that I was jokingly thinking about being the 10th Titanic captain is Bruno. And just because I want to see Bruno back in the story, because his Devil Fruit was probably one of my favorites in the entire series, being able to create a door anywhere, that would leave like 5 essentially of people who can literally sneak in and sneak out. And the reason why I want to talk about the Shadow King so much is because the implications of his Devil Fruit are so immense that it is crazy, right? So if we think about it in a couple ways, right? A multitude of ways of like the way things are playing out right now. So at one point in the series, right, Blackbeard interacted with Bonnie, and obviously Blackbeard basically ran away because Akainu showed up. So it'd be interesting. What did Bonnie do with Blackbeard? That's interesting. But another interesting thing is the fact that if the Blackbeard pirates are on Egghead, and you have the situation where all these things are happening, right? Because of Vegapunk, you've now given Moria the ability to not only take over the ultimate beings, but become one of the most omnipotent forces in the verse, right? And by that I mean, I'm not trying to say omnipotent, but I'm saying you're giving him an ability to not only take shadows, but reassign shadows to other people. So before it was like, oh, if you control the Seraphim, that's like a huge power, like with the Gorosei. But now you're giving Moria someone who can technically bypass that order, because you're taking the shadow of whatever being that you're going to take it from, and then now you're putting it into the body of the Seraphim. And the Seraphim, even though they're created to only listen to the orders because of the command ships, but now you're giving them essentially a new will per se. And I don't know if you take out the shadow, like we don't know how it's going to play out if you take out the shadow of the Seraphim, just going to like drop dead and not move, because essentially they really are just I think they're humanoids. I don't think they're cyborgs. I think they're, because they can shoot lasers. I'm just going to go on the side of that. They're humanoids, but at the same time they're cyborgs, so they make sure of the two, like Frankie. But if you put the shadow in them, and almost, to be honest, it's very similar to Law's ability. And Law's ability is a little bit further because you can switch the personality out. But if you put the shadows into these new Seraphim, Moria will essentially have control over the Seraphim that even the Gorosei, and they wouldn't even listen to the Gorosei at this moment. And why this is so interesting is because everything's happening with Bonnie right now. And if Bonnie says her power doesn't work on living organisms for a very long time, but I don't think that's the same case with Seraphim. I think Bonnie, with the age of Seraphim, you'd have older Seraphim and they would just be older and they would stay older. But the reason why I'm saying this is because the way Blackbeard is going about things, right, and the way Moria went about things, it is very plausible that Moria can literally just go and get the bodies of old pirates. I know this is a very old like theory that people have talked about, but it's very possible now that the more we think about it, because if not only we've seen cloning from Vegapunk already, but we have the idea that there are going to be multitude of times throughout the story that they're going to be two of the same character. Like with the clones, we actually seen them now. I'm not going to say Sanji, but Sanji's siblings are they're all alike. Right? I know like they're different, but at the same time, like their abilities are the same, and they're sort of like they're all like Power Rangers. They have their own color, unique abilities at the same time, but like they're all essentially like the same type of person, same type of being. And Sanji being its own being, being able to have its own emotions, and Reiju being the same way. But it's very possible that we get to see maybe a Roger, which is very like it's very like talked about thing that maybe Moria goes and digs up Roger's grave and brings out Roger. But we already saw Ryuma. We know Whitebeard's dead, we know Ace is dead, but these are all people that can possibly come back into the story some way, somehow because of Moria. And if Blackbeard is just trying to bolster his power in any way, shape, or form, even though it's just dealt fruit abilities, if Blackbeard does align with Moria, Moria's like, you know what, even though you killed Absalom, and that's the biggest thing, right? Because he killed Absalom, it could be a situation where Moria tries to bring back Absalom like a zombie and give him a new shadow, because that was Moria's whole trope to begin with. And now you also have Perona too, coming back and aiding, probably trying to find Moria. So now you have this faction sort of building within the Blackbeard Pirates who can essentially be it's very hard. I'm trying to figure out the wording for this, but like essentially you have a faction that's brewing inside of the Blackbeard Pirates that can deter, or that can, with Moria being the head, sort of split away from Blackbeard himself. And because of that, right, is why I'm thinking that Blackbeard, even though he's supposed to be this herald villain, right, at the same time, what we're dealing with are all pirates, right? At the end of the day, right, these are all pirates. And these are like the true entity of pirates. Like you have, and it's interesting who we saw with Blackbeard, right? It was basically his main posse from the beginning. You had Burgess, Van Augur, Doc Q, and that was it, right? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think it was just them three. I can't remember. But it was just Blackbeard's main crew. And Lafitte. Sorry, Lafitte wasn't there though. But you basically have Blackbeard's main crew. And if it is playing out like how Kiji is as a spy, but depending on who the 10th Lieutenant Captain is, like he could be someone hiding in the shadows, biding time in order to build his force. And say it is Moria, right? Moria's whole thing was that the reason why he was on Thriller Bark was because he was not trying to hide in. He was trying to recreate an army of zombies because he lost his crew already. So he wanted to build an army of undying people so that he wouldn't have to face the same heartache of losing his crew again and turning out to how he was. So now you're giving him basically an army, let's say of robots, maybe let's say he gets Seraphim. You're giving him an army like that, but then you also have people who would ally with Moria because of the power he has. Like Shiryu saw an opportunity, went for it, right? Of all people saw an opportunity, went for it. Basically, all the people who were in Impo Down saw an opportunity and just went for it. But now the situation is, Blackbeard could be getting Blackbeard, and that's the thing that we don't really know yet. And that's the thing that's really found interesting, is that these pirates may all be biding time in order to take down Blackbeard himself. But right now he's too powerful. Even though he is a Yonko, what we saw with pirates is that taking out the Yonko not only gives you like the infamy of being taken out of Yonko, but at the same time it gives you power. So say Moria is the 10th Lieutenant Captain, I feel as though he may be just, and the thing is like pirates hold grudges, right? And say Moria, if they don't kill Moria, I think it would be the most detrimental thing to Blackbeard, because you killed one of his crewmates, and he already saw what happened to Moria originally when you killed his crewmates, and then he killed another one, and he was actually spinning the block on a Yonko crew by himself with a bunch of like fodder zombies just to try to take down Blackbeard. So it could be a situation that Moria's also biding time in the shadows in order for him to possibly bolster back up his power and probably take down Blackbeard. And that's what I'm talking about the Shadow King, is because even though Luffy's the sun god, the sun and the light still cast a shadow. And that was one of the biggest things about Thriller Bark, and I'll definitely do a Thriller Bark dissect. But essentially Moria's aspirations and Moria's like thinking and how he acted was very similar to Luffy. And the only difference between Luffy and Moria is that Luffy still had his crew, Moria didn't. And that's sort of how the two played out. And even when you look at the bad timeline, I think you look at the bad timeline for Luffy, you can almost see it. Like if it really did not play out well for Luffy, he's gonna turn into this old slouch. And that's basically what Moria did. But Moria still had the power like to make other people move for him with the shadow ability. So he's still trying, but at the same time he wasn't really trying. But now you give him a reason to try. right? You give him a path in order to buy time, but also build power. So even though the sun does cast light or cast shadows, there's a shadow still there. And the reason I'm saying Shadow King is because, hey, even though people hated him and he's probably one of the most overlooked villains in the series, it could be a situation where he's going to play one of the bigger parts in the series moving forward. And I think it's very interesting that his ability is able to bring back the dead, and we are essentially in a story about essentially in a huge story about passing on wills, but at the same time how the only time dreams die is when they're forgotten. And if Moore still has some will inside of him to possibly try to still become Power King like he wanted to originally, this is the perfect opportunity for him to realize that, okay, this is my time. Even though you kill my crewmate, I'm gonna buy time and wait. And when I build my power back up, just know I'm still coming for you. And that's why I think and it's really interesting that a lot of these pirates weren't shown with Blackbeard, even though Katarina Devon and Vasco shot with him on Amazon Lily. But his interaction with Law now, it's very interesting to see how it all plays out. So I'm gonna say, even though this video did not talk about who the 10th Titanic captain is, but it talked about the path. So if the 10th Titanic captains were these amount of people, and it could be a situation where Moria really is the 10th Titanic captain, and we're just overthinking it way too much. But it makes sense that it could be Aokiji too. But I like the idea that it's Moria, but also Moria is basically trying to pull a Blackbeard on Blackbeard, buying his time until he can actually take down Blackbeard. And the thing is, Blackbeard's main ability is darkness, and hey, it's very easy to travel in darkness when you're a shadow. But that's right in my video. Well, like I said at the end of every single video, leave a comment down below and tell me what you guys think. And that pen over here, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell button to come back next time and remain enlightened, y'all. Remember, get right, don't get left, and until next time, y'all, remain polished. Peace.